So I have taken groups of friends on little field trips to swinger clubs more than once in different cities, in different women. And I want to be clear, I wasn't doing it as a healing exercise. I wasn't leading a workshop, although I have led workshops at swinger clubs. I wasn't even going to have sex. And trust me, I tell you if I did, and I tell you how it was. But my Ori kept pulling me there. My Ori kept pulling me towards spaces like this, and I followed the pull. I didn't even know what Ori was at the time when I first entered a swinger club, but over time I have learned that every moment that I followed my Ori was leading me someplace, although unconventional, was someplace I needed to go. But here's what I found every single time I went to one of those swinger clubs. I found women inhabiting themselves fully without apology. Black women, white women, brown women, women of every size, every shape, every age, dressed however they wanted to be dressed, dressed in a way that made them feel sensuous and delicious, moving however they wanted to move and taking up just as much space as they wanted to take up. They weren't performing for anyone. They weren't managing anyone else's comfort. They were just being fully embodied in themselves. Now, these spaces, at least the ones that I've been to, are run like communities, not nightclubs. Although the dance floor, the lounge area, the DJ, and all the things can feel like a nightclub, and then there are spaces for other things to go down. But they're co-owned by women, and so consent training is required for everybody in there. No single man can just come up in there and be weird. They need to be with a woman. Even if they're not with the woman, it can't just be a bunch of dudes coming in or a single dude coming in being the way that they are. And then the entire infrastructure is built on the premise that women's safety and sovereignty have to come first, because if women don't feel safe and don't feel comfortable being there, they don't come in, and the whole business model falls down. So every time I walked into one of those clubs, I felt like, damn, is this what embodied freedom feels like? Like, it's palpable. You can feel the sensual and sexual energy, um, ru- navigating the room, circulating in the room, and it's not seedy, it's actually beautiful. And so you feel it. And then my other thought was, why is it so rare? Why do we have to come all the way to a swinger club to actually experience sacred sensual autonomy? Now that's the question that led me here into this video and to the wisdom I'm about to share. Because what I was experiencing, that aliveness, that sovereignty, that inhabiting myself fully, I now understand is what sensual ancestral healing is pointing us towards. Not the swinger club specifically, but the freedom that was possible inside a swinger club. And the question of why that freedom is so hard to find elsewhere, and also why it's essential for us, especially as Black women. That is what today's video is about. It's a teaching video for the second portal of my framework, and it is embody your sensuality. That's what this is about today. So, what I'm talking about is the real reason why pleasure is complicated, or it feels complicated in our bodies. The epigenetic truth that our ancestral mothers passed down, and what sensual ancestral healing actually means in practice, not just in concept or in theory. And if you're new here, I am Barbara Ohuninifa, griot, author, ancestral strategist, and the founder of Beautiful Powerful Love, which is a storytelling movement for the remembering, healing, and liberation of Black women. If that's your jam, please subscribe, ring the bell, like. Let's make sure you know when there's more content and other women can find this as well. All right, you ready? You got a glass of water? Because, sometimes we got to sip water along the way. Let's go. This video is part of a series built around my seven portals framework. Seven aspects of ourselves as Black women and of our ancestral mothers that the world has forced us to minimize, suppress, forget, or try to manage. This portal is embody your sensuality. And I want to be precise about what I mean about that. Because sensuality is one of those words that have been narrowed down to mean something sexual, something performative, or something that's really for somebody else's consumption. But sensuality, as I am using it, as Audre Lorde used it, is your full felt aliveness in your own body. It's your capacity to be present to sensation, to pleasure, to desire, to the richness of your own interior world. It's not about how you look, although, if looking good makes you truly, truly feel good, but it's really about how you live and how you move through the world. And for Black women especially, reclaiming that capacity, it's not about personal development or, reaching some goal. It's about ancestors. It's an ancestral imperative that we reclaim that capacity. And let me tell you why. Let's start with the historical record, not the sanitized version. You know, I don't do that around these parts, but the actual one. Make sure you have some sipping water nearby because as we talk about these ancestral things, parts of your ancestral lineage just might need that water to kind of cool and calm. So, under chattel slavery in the United States, Black women's bodies were treated as property, not as people who had desires and preferences and interior lives, but as property, not as individual sovereign beings with the right to consent or not, but as property. Sexual sovereignty, the right to inhabit your own body, to decide what happens to it, to know your own desire and have it mean something, was systematically stripped away from Black women, not as a side effect, but as a feature of this country. A system that depended on the reproduction of enslaved people for profit, and reproduction meaning birth, meaning they depended on Black women to continuously birth children that they could then shuttle right into slavery, even change the law to ensure that any child born of an enslaved mother was then themselves enslaved. When before that, it was different in that the child took on the legal status of the father. And because we know what was happening on them plantations with them plantation owners, and because they couldn't bring in new Africans anymore, technically, they were producing them locally, domestically, which meant sexual abuse. It was a system that depended on us, and that gave them every reason to commodify our bodies and every reason to ensure that we had no framework of understanding our own bodies as sacred or self belonging. I mean, we had the framework, we came here with it, we came from the continent with that, but over hundreds of years here being enslaved and through what our ancestral mothers endured, that became further and further away. Now, to justify that violation, this culture, this American culture, built two archetypes or two stereotypes that still live in our bodies today. There were more, but I'm going to just talk about two in particular. The Jezebel, the hypersexualized Black woman who is insatiable, always available, always hot, always wanted it, incapable of being violated because her desire was assumed to be boundless and her consent was irrelevant. I'm gonna just say the words and how they used to talk about us, and in some ways still talk about us as that hot little bitch. Take a deep breath. And they created this stereotype to justify their sexual abuse. If she was always wanting it, then there was nothing to answer for her. In fact, white men were the victim because of this Jezebel. And then there was the Mammy, the desexualized Black woman, devoted, self sacrificing, her entire existence organized around the comfort and the care of everybody else. No needs of her own, no desires. Her breasts looked more like pillows or were treated more like pillows or ways to feed others than actual parts of her own anatomy that, yes, brought sensual pleasure as well. Nobody mattered. Her body didn't matter beyond its utilities and what it could do for others. This stereotype was also created to justify extraction. If she had no sensual interior life, you could take everything and call it service. Now you got Jezebel and you got Mammy, hypersexualized or completely stripped of it. These two are the distortions offered to Black women to understand our sensuality. And both of them served the same purpose, which was to sever us from our knowing about our own bodies, our own internal knowing of who we are and who we were, or more specifically, who our ancestral mothers were. I wrote about the impact of these and other stereotypes on my own life in my memoir of called From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love. And that's where I talk about, in terms of Jezebel, the videos of the 80s. I'm Gen X. But the videos, and specifically some around Two Live Crew. If y'all know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And the Miami bass music to Nell Carter and the character she played in Gimme a Break, Jezebel and Mammy, on full display, being constantly reiterated in our lives, even in the 90s and in the 80s, and we see it now. Again, Gen X, y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is might be an area where you need to take a deep breath, sip some water, or even take a break and come back, because again, we're talking about things that live within us. So your body may respond without you even understanding it intellectually or mentally. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Now, what this all meant in terms of, in lived terms, for our ancestral mothers is that they existed in a constant state of threat, in a constant state of surveillance, in a constant state of survival. And in that state, exploration of desire or surrender to pleasure, embodied aliveness in their own skin was not it just wasn't a luxury that they could afford. It was a vulnerability that they couldn't risk. Not to mention, they learned to close it off, to manage, to disassociate, to survive inside their bodies without fully inhabiting them because of the things that were happening to them. They weren't broken, but they did what they had to do to protect whatever was left. Take a deep breath. And here's the thing about epigenetics. That's the science that studies how lived experiences shape genetic expression across generations. That closing off that our ancestral mothers had to do to survive, it didn't stay with them. It was passed down. The trauma, the coping mechanism, all of it was passed down. Research in epigenetic inheritance has shown that traumatic stress responses like hypervigilance, the body's learned inability to move from survival into rest, or the suppression of pleasure and sensation as a protective adaptation, all of that can be transmitted through gene expression to next generations and next generations. So while we talk about, or I know some folks talk about slavery, that was so long ago, we've gotten over it. No, we haven't. It's still in your body. It's still in this country. I don't know what people looking at, but it's still in the greater experience that we're having collectively. But what we're talking about right now is that it is still in your body, and it's not a metaphor, it's biology. Your grandmother's body or great 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 grandmother's body is speaking inside your nervous system right now. I know mine is. I feel them. I feel it. And not in some woo woo weird way, but literally the reaction of hearing the words has a response within my body. And this is why so many of us arrive at this place in our lives where we have a complicated relationship with our own pleasure. Not because something is wrong with us or it's not meant to be, but because something was done to the women who made us. And the body remembers what the mind was never told. That is how epigenetics, that's how genetics, that's how ancestral trauma, ancestral wisdom, and ancestral healing works. It gets passed whether we talk about it or not. Take a deep breath. If you feeling this somewhere within you like I am, I want you to know there is a place where we can go deeper. Love Letters from the Ancestral Mothers is my free 7-part email series, 7 parts because it goes through each of the 7 series, the 7 portals. And letter 2 is a love letter to your pleasure. That part of you that was taught to earn it or to shrink it or apologize for it. It goes directly into this medicine and it's free. The link's in the description. Come sit with us whenever you're ready. Take a deep breath. And let's go forward. We ain't done. I want to be clear about something before we go further because I know some of y'all hear the word sensuality again and you start sorting yourselves. You might say, well, I'm celibate, so this probably isn't for me, or I'm in a monogamous marriage. This is something else, or I'm polyamorous. I already have this figured out. I just need better orgasms. Is that what we talking about? And no, but also yes, but not in the way you think. What I'm talking about is not about how many partners you have or don't have. It's not about waiting for marriage, like I don't know, whatever, or leaving marriage behind. It's not about abstinence or abundance, celibacy or sexual freedom, monogamy or ethical non-monogamy. It All of those are valid paths, and any of them could be yours. And I'm not here to move you off of it or tell you what you're supposed to be doing. But your sensuality, your full felt aliveness in your own body, your capacity to be present to pleasure, to desire, to your own interior world that exists underneath all of those choices. Let me say that again. Your sensuality, again, it's yours. Your full felt aliveness to be in your body, to feel present, to feel pleasure, to feel desire, to understand what is desire to you, to be present in your own interior world. All of that exists underneath any choice that you could make about being partnered or not, or who you engage with intimacy with or not, or how you roll or how you identify yourself. It's not determined by them. A celibate woman can be deeply and fully, radically sensual. A woman with multiple partners, a woman or a femme with multiple partners, can be completely disconnected in her own body. The practice and the presence are not the same thing. That's what Audre Lorde was pointing to in Uses of the Erotic. This text is essential. Every Black woman in this community should be reading on that. She named the erotic as a resource within us that lives in a deeply female and spiritual plane, or more specifically, a deeply feminine and spiritual plane, because it's not attached to gender or any of the ways that we have weighted these words. It's an energetic and spiritual experience. Erotic, it is. I said that like Yoda. I be talking like Yoda a lot. But anyway, a source of power and information is not just pleasure, and it's not a behavior, and it's not a relationship status, and it's not, oh my God, he wants me. Or I got a comment on one post from a woman that was like, I choose all of my outfits and how I dress and how I do my hair and how I do my makeup to please my man. What the fuck? That's a whole other video. I'm scrolling now. Let me come on back. But this idea of the erotic is a way, and sensuality is a way of being in full contact with your own aliveness. It's a part of this experience as spiritual beings having human experiences. And she, Audre Lorde, understood that, and that what's been done to us through the suppression of the erotic is not a minor thing. It's severing us from our own knowing and from the part of us that feels, discerns, desires, and decides from the inside rather than performing from the outside. And that's what they want. They want us performing for their pleasure. And by they, I'm talking about the system, patriarchy, capitalism, colonization, enslavement, all of these things that are running the world as we are living in it today. And that's, falling apart. They want us living on the outside, performing for their pleasure, for their benefit, for their uses. And for Black women specifically, because you know that's who we talking about. That's who we here for. That severing wasn't just cultural. It was structural. It was legal. It was enforced through generations of bodily violation. Generations, hundreds of years. You don't just undo that by just going to a quick little workshop and deciding, you're going to practice Tantra. Do that, but it's a lot more work involved. And that means that it was enforced through all of these generations of bodily violation, and all of that was inherited. And that means that reclaiming it is not about finding, again, the right sexual identity or the right practice. It's about going back to the root. And the root is ancestral. It is healing that has to be done, again, both in the present, but also ancestral healing. That in and of itself is an act of liberation. And it's not just for you, it's for the ancestral mothers who live within you who never got to be free. And if you saying, "Oh, I don't know what she's talking about ancestors," first of all, that's what this whole everything is about. But I need you to understand, whether you believe in the concept of spiritual ancestors or not, they believe in you, they know you, and they exist. But aside from that, the science, the epigenetics, is not just spiritual. You can be Christian and still understand that you have ancestors. You are not immaculately conceived and just sprouted up here. You have people who came before you, and those people live in your DNA. The essence of what they left behind is in your DNA. So if you can't look at it spiritually and energetically, at a minimum, look at it scientifically and be able to understand that you are not standing alone. You are standing on what they experienced as well. Take a deep breath. Let's go. A question for you, though. Where are you in this? I want to speak directly to where you might be right now, because this is not just one experience. It shows up differently depending on where you are in your life and in your body. So, for the woman who gave everything to every role, maybe you spent years pouring yourself out. We know about that. Into your career, into raising children or building something, into relationships where you were the one who held it together. And somewhere in all of that, quietly, without ceremony, you stopped checking in on your own body. It's not that you didn't care, but there was no time, there was no room, and honestly, nobody else was asking or checking in. So you forgot to check in on yourself. Now maybe you catch yourself feeling numb in moments that are supposed to feel good. Or you move through intimate moments and realize you were somewhere else the whole time. Or you look in the mirror and you don't quite recognize the woman looking back. Not because you've aged, because black don't crack, but because the woman in the mirror looks tired in a way that sleep hasn't been able to touch in years. Honey, you're not broken, you depleted. And that depletion and the potential for desire, they can't live in the same body at the same time. And then there's the woman whose body is changing and nobody told her, nobody prepared her. Your desire maybe has gotten quieter. Your body responds differently than it used to. Ta. Intimacy feels more complicated, physically, emotionally, or both. And this world that we live in, this environment that we're in, has nothing useful to offer us except for the idea that that chapter is winding down, where you're just not really a sexual being anyway because you're over a certain age or a certain weight or a certain whatever. But it's not winding down, it's changing. And women who navigate this well are not the ones who fight the change, trying to stay young, especially realizing that we live in a world that is ran by PDFs. This idea of trying to artificially and crazily hold on to this standard of youth that is just not even like what in the world, what in nature actually does that. But anyway, let me get back on topic. But the ones who actually listen to what their body is asking them for now, those are the ones who navigate this well, which, and that might be different than what it asked for 15 years ago. We don't like the same things that we liked 15 years ago. We are not the same people that we were 15 years ago. Why would your body be the same as it was 15 years ago? Meet it where it's at, give it what it needs. But that disconnection you're feeling is not your body failing you. I've had to learn that through all of the physical, medical, and health traumas that I've been through. My body didn't fail me with any one of those because I'm still here. It made it through. It did what it needed to do to make go through and to make it through. Your body is asking you to be curious about it in a new way. Nothing on this planet is the same that it was. We all know that, if nothing else, from 2020 to now in 2026, ain't nothing the same. So this is an invitation, not an ending, to check in with your body and get to know her. Then there's the woman who survived so much and is finally living for herself. You made it through some things, some relationships, some loss, some reinventions, decades of being needed by everybody else but yourself. But now, maybe for the first time in your whole life, you are living on your terms. But that disconnection from your body ran long and it ran deep. And you're not always sure where to begin reclaiming it. And I want you to hear this. It's not too late. Your sensuality it's not a young woman's game. It doesn't just belong to young women. It doesn't belong to that you from 15, 20, 30, 40, however many years ago when you felt you had it. It don't just belong to that version of you. It belongs to you at every age and every season. Your sensuality is yours. The women who come home to themselves in this chapter describe it as the most embodied they've ever felt because they're finally doing it entirely for themselves, not for the gaze of a man, not for the approval of friends or any social aspect, but truly for themselves. And then there's the woman who just ended something long. You closed the chapter. Marriage, a long relationship, something that was your whole everything for years, that you centered your life around for years. And now you're standing in front of yourself and you're wondering, who are you without that structure? Who are you without that thing to wrap yourself around, to give you form? Who are you? What do you actually like? Who are you in your own body? And you might feel like you're starting from scratch, but I'm here to tell you, sis, you are not. You starting from truth. And that is a completely different thing. Take a deep breath. Let me know in the comments which one of these selves or stages do you find yourself in right now? Because wherever you are, the invitation of this portal is the same. Come back to yourself. Not to a younger version, not to who you were before, not to who someone else needs you to be, but to yourself now as you actually are. Now, if you want a structured path to begin that excavation, remember who the fuck you are. My activity book was built for things like this. It's also a companion to my memoir, From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love, where I go deep into how some of those stereotypes and this inherited disconnection lived in my body and how I began to find my way back. Now, self guided, all 7 portals, over 125 activities at your own pace. This is the activity book, plus the breath work and visualization videos that are already on this channel, free, or all created as companions to this portal and the other portals in the book. It's all linked below. Use them together. Use these resources because I want to see all the Black women and femmes come into themselves fully. And part of that is your sensual selves. Part of that is nurturing yourself. So, what does sensual ancestral healing actually look like? And I want to give you 3 frames, not a protocol or a checklist, but just frames that will change how you understand this work. The first frame is sensation before pleasure. Before you can reclaim your pleasure, you have to reclaim sensation. The ability to simply notice what your body is feeling: temperature, texture, breath, sensation, tension, ease, and all of that without judgment, without agenda, without performing anything. That's where the work begins, with sensation, which is really the core of sensuality, not in this dramatic reclamation or something else external, but it's in the small noticing. A lot of us move through our days entirely in our heads. I know I used to. And even now, I got to check myself and bring it back. The body in those scenarios just becomes this vehicle that transports us between commitments. But the work of this portal starts with coming back into the body as a home with curiosity, not criticism, and not utility. And one of the most powerful doorways into that is your ancestors. Not this abstract concept, but as a felt sensory experience that you connect with them, and it's actually a connection. And in the first week of my ancestral activation series, I'll walk you through how to begin connecting with your own ancestral lineage. And in this particular video that I'll link up here somewhere, I offer an understanding and a meditation through your senses: what you taste, what you smell, textures, sounds, all of that that carries memories that belong to the women who came before us, not just your mother, but all of the women that came before us. Because the reality is, our ancestors left their mark in the way we engage our senses. They whisper through the foods we eat. Come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. The scents that evoke these memories, or the songs that stir something within us. When we engage with our senses with intention, we create these pathways for ancestral presence, wisdom, and healing to manifest in our lives. And the video is in the description as well. And I really see it as a companion to this portal. So start there if the body work feels too far away and too distant. Let your ancestors walk you back in, because they in there waiting for you too. So the second frame is the liberation of our ancestral mothers. And here's something I want you to hold as a sacred truth. Your ancestral mothers survived to proliferate the bloodline despite every atrocity organized against them. Whew. And they did it with no freedom at all. They did it under complete terror. And they didn't even have the simple freedom to be able to surrender to joy. There was no permission to explore desire. There was no safety to fully inhabit their embodied selves. And as I talked about earlier, they had to disassociate in order to survive what they were living through, with no way seen of out aside from future generations being able to get out and get free. They passed that life force down to you. It arrived through the mothers and the mothers and the mothers and all the women and womb holders in your lineage that birthed all of the people who birthed all the people. It arrived and you are here. And what that means is this: that when you reclaim your sensuality, when you choose presence over performance, embodiment over management, pleasure as a practice rather than as a reward you got to earn, you're not being indulgent. You are completing something our ancestral mothers could not. You are liberating the ancestral mothers who live inside your cells, in your DNA. And it's not a metaphor, it's medicine. And it's what is needed. Take a deep breath. And frame 3, know yourself first. Ialosha Oshunyimi, also known as Got to Be Oshun, she has been an initiated Oshun priest for over 30 years, and she teaches that reclaiming your sensuality begins with knowing yourself, not performing a version of yourself for someone else's desire, but actually knowing the interior architecture of your own wants, your own pleasure, your own body's language. Now, again, she's a priest of Oshun for over 30 years, and Oshun is the Orisha of love, sensuality, the erotic, beauty, pleasure, rivers, abundance, all the things that make life sweet and worth living. And Oshun does not ask us to make ourselves small so others can feel comfortable. She teaches us that our full expression is sacred, and that includes our sensual selves. Without that, we are not fully complete. Now, I encourage you to go deep with Got to Be Oshun's work. She has classes, she has videos here on YouTube. The link is in the description. Check her out. Again, 30 years in, she has a lot to tell us and a lot to teach us in the realm of sensuality and the erotic and all things that fall under Oshun's purview. But I also want to say this. If you are carrying sexual trauma, and many of us are from this lifetime, let alone what we've inherited over generations, and whether we call it that or not, this work, this portal, what we're talking about in this video, is not meant to bypass that. Somatic work with a trauma informed practitioner, therapy that works with the body from licensed, trained, certified people who, yes, have the cultural relevance and experience, but we're going to need them to know what they're talking about because this is getting into some deep areas. And then the ancestral healing work, there's not a certification or a license for that, but there is training that people receive and get to understand truly how to do that and how to do it safe. And everybody need to be trauma informed. That's a question that you can ask off the rip when you're looking for a therapist to work with, a healer to work with. And none of these are in competition with each other or with what I'm offering here. They're all part of the same medicine. And given that our ancestral mothers, what they've had to endure for hundreds of years, we may need multiple different modalities in order to fully heal all of the layers because healing is not a linear line, it's not a direct line, it's a spiral. Sometimes it zigzags, it does different things, and you need different things to get at it. Take a deep breath. But if you're ready to work with some direct support, not alone, not self paced, and not replacing any of the certified, licensed mental health practitioners that also should be on your team, but actually work in relationship with someone who can hold the full ancestral and embodied context with you. That's what my one on one sessions are for. The links in the bio for Black women who are done. I say link in the bio, link in the description for Black women that are done circling and ready to really come home to themselves and explore the portals or one of the portals. Anyway, the link is in the description. I really want you to know that that's available to you. Here's what I know about staying in that pattern. When we don't do this work, when we keep moving through our days and our lives from our heads and not from our bodies, and when I say from our bodies, it's not for someone else's pleasure, for someone else's purpose, for someone else's gaze, but for your own sovereignty. And when we keep shrinking our desires and calling it wisdom, when we keep performing instead of actually inhabiting, we pass it on. It's not that we're bad mothers or partners or bad friends, but the body will teach what the mind doesn't examine. The closing off that our ancestral mothers learned to survive, if we don't consciously interrupt that, we hand that forward to our children or to the women in our community who look to us as models of what a full life looks like, and we continue the pattern. Interruption is the liberation, and it begins with one woman who decides that she's worth coming back to, who decides her desire and her pleasure and her sovereignty and her sensuality are hers to embody. So when you're ready, come sit with us in the free email course, Love Letters from Ancestral Mothers. The link's below. Go deeper at your own pace with the activity book and the companion videos on this channel, or come work with me directly in a one on one session. All three links are in the description, and the door that calls you is the right one. Now, we've made it to the end, and I thank you for rocking with me as always. I thank you for being here. I thank you for receiving this, which can be a difficult conversation for a lot of us, but we made it. This work is not easy. Choosing to inhabit yourself fully after everything that has been organized against that, that's one of the bravest things a Black woman can do. And I see you doing it and I see you showing up. And I'm honored to be in the room with you. I'm honored to share whatever wisdom and experience that I can share that can help you along your journey. If this video did something for you, if you saw yourself in it, and again, let me know in the comments which of those life stages that you're in terms of how you are dealing with your body and owning your sensuality. And if this video, again, if it did something for you, share it with another woman of femme who needs it, who needs to make contact with themselves and to understand how important their sensuality, their desire, their pleasure is to live in a full, whole, and complete life, let alone the ancestral healing that is involved in that. Let me know. Also, let me know in a comment what sensation, what pleasure, what part of your embodied self are you ready to reclaim? Like, where are you now in terms of which of those identities, what life stage you are at in terms of understanding your sensuality, and what part you are ready to reclaim your sensuality, your pleasure? What part of that are you ready to just say, this is mine? Let me know in the comments. Let's get into it. You know, I read all the comments and I respond. Let's help each other. Let's heal. Y'all know the deal. As always, until the next time, take good care of you. Peace.